A prank on the Andy Griffith Show set in 1963 went horribly wrong. Cast members saw Andy Griffith in bed with a co-star after breaking into his hotel room. CBS executives went into a frenzy. Advertisers threatened to withhold millions of dollars. Decisions on the show's future were made in secret meetings. The most popular small-town sheriff in America was actually an unfaithful husband. What followed nearly put an end to the Andy Griffith Show. Sheldon Leonard had spent years in the industry. He was able to spot talent. He saw Andy Griffith in No Time for Sergeants on Broadway in the 1950s. That was the turning point. Griffith was a charming but innocent rural boy who was conscripted into the army. He captivated the audience with his charm and seamless sense of humor. Something special caught Leonard's attention. He saw more than a superb performer. He recognized the ideal lead for a TV program. That concept became the Andy Griffith Show. Later on, Leonard referred to it as one of his most significant career choices. And he was correct. Few characters ever had the same impact on viewers as Griffith's portrayal of Sheriff Andy Taylor did when the show debuted. His friendliness, sense of humor, and practical insight made Mayberry seem like home. Prior to approving the show, CBS required evidence that Griffith could sustain a series. Sheriff Andy Taylor was first made public by an episode of Danny Thomas called Danny Meets Andy Griffith on February 15, 1960. In the episode, Danny Thomas's character, Danny Williams, is stopped for speeding in Mayberry. More than just a sheriff, Andy Taylor is a person. In addition, he serves as the town newspaper's editor and judge of the peace. Though some features were altered, viewers were given a peek of Mayberry throughout the episode. Andy's persona was more exaggerated and tended toward small-town clichés. A different character named Henrietta Perkins was performed by Frances Bavier, who would go on to play Aunt Bee. This test was more than just a creative one. It was Sheldon Leonard's wise business decision. By using the backdoor pilot, CBS was able to determine viewer interest without having to invest more funds in a new show. The response was just what they had hoped for. General Foods, CBS's main sponsor, was persuaded. Greenlight television in the early 1960s was greatly influenced by corporate advertisers. General Foods supported the event wholeheartedly, not simply endorsed it. They decided right away to sponsor the Andy Griffith Show after seeing the pilot. Everything was streamlined by that choice. Now that they had the money and the confidence, CBS could move forward. In 1960, the Andy Griffith Show made its debut on October 3. The setting was one of the best decisions Leonard and Griffith made. Mayberry wasn't merely a tiny community. It was classic. It felt like the 1930s or 1940s, despite the fact that the show was broadcast in the 1960s. Civil rights struggles and the Cold War were not mentioned. It was deliberate. Griffith and Leonard wanted Mayberry to be a place of escape. With 1960, when the Andy Griffith program debuted, Andy Griffith wasn't totally at ease with his part. Not wanting to be stereotyped as a simple-minded pumpkin, he had just played Will Stockdale, a charming but clumsy country boy in No Time for Sergeants. Early on, he made extensive use of overdone Southern charm in his depiction of Sheriff Andy Taylor. Huge smiles, an overly enthusiastic demeanor, and a lively humor that seemed less like a fully realized persona and more like one of his stage monologues. Griffith soon saw, however, that this strategy would not be sustainable. He changed the way he performed by the second season. He turned into Mayberry's calm, collected center for chuckles. He played the straight man and let the supporting actors do the humor. The entire framework of the play was altered, not simply the acting. The main character caused mayhem in the majority of the sitcoms of the time. The plot of I Love Lucy was driven by Lucy's shenanigans. The Andy Griffith program, however, reversed that relationship. The humor was provided by the supporting characters, particularly Don Knotts as Barney Fife, while Andy Taylor emerged as the sage and understanding problem solver. The casting of Don Knotts as Barney Fife was one of the most unexpected developments in the show's evolution. Permanent aid. However, Knotts and Griffith had an unmistakable chemistry when he read for a single episode. He received a one-year contract offer right away from producer Sheldon Leonard. That choice completely altered the dynamic of the show. Andy Griffith didn't initially want Frances Bavier to play Aunt Bee, thus this casting decision also had its own set of difficulties. It was Sheldon Leonard who called. Despite being a seasoned actor, Bavier's somber professional manner did not mesh well with Griffith's laid-back disposition. A distinct kind of challenge was presented by the hunt for Opie Taylor. Ron Howard, age 6, was the most notable of more than 500 child performers who tried out for the part. During a General Electric Theater episode, producer Sheldon Leonard noticed his innate appeal. Howard was really engaged to another show at the time, but he joined the Andy Griffith Show after that pilot was not picked up. Ron Howard's father proposed a different strategy, but Opie was initially intended to be mischievous and full of energy like many TV youngsters of the time. He instructed Ron to portray Opie as sincere and courteous, which set him apart from other child roles on TV. The choice was successful. One of the most heartwarming elements of the program was Opie's bond with his father, which provided a counterpoint to the hilarity. Howard spent 8 years on the show from 1960 to 1968, growing up on set. He had already begun to consider his career as a filmmaker by the time it concluded. He began playing around with Super 8 cameras when he was 15 years old, setting the stage for his eventual Oscar-winning filmmaking career. Even now, Howard acknowledges that his stint on The Andy Griffith Show had a significant impact on his career as a storyteller and actor. The Andy Griffith Show became an immediate hit after its October 3, 1960, launch. In its debut season, it placed fourth overall in Nielsen ratings and became the most popular sitcom in America. Such success was uncommon in a new era of television when titans like Gunsmoke and The Ed Sullivan Program controlled the industry. However, The Andy Griffith Show was unique. It seemed genuine, not simply hilarious. It offered spectators a cozy, comfortable, and weekly visitable little town world. Averaging 27.8 million viewers per week, the first season aired for 32 episodes from October 1960 to May 1961, bringing viewers to the fictional hamlet of Mayberry in the north that felt like home. The focal point of it all was Sheriff Andy Taylor, portrayed by Andy Griffith. He was a composed and astute individual who maintained order by patience and common sense. His deputy, Barney Fife, Don Knotts, was the source of the humor because of his excessive enthusiasm and frequent errors. There was wonderful chemistry between them. Barney had a lot of energy and was erratic, while Andy was stable and considerate. That equilibrium made the show successful. The Andy Griffith program was unique because it blended humor and emotion. Just regarding humor. People were the focus. Sheriff Taylor had more than simply a job. Ron Howard portrayed him as a single father raising his son, Opie. Frances Bavier's character, Bea, his aunt, lived with him and did her best to look after them. Each episode featured both heartwarming and humorous moments. Its teachings on moral behavior, friendship, and family. In The Pickle Story, one of the most well-known episodes, Andy and Barney were trying to resist eating Aunt Bea's awful prepared pickles. It was amusing, but it also demonstrated their generosity. They didn't want to offend her, even if the pickles weren't very tasty. The show's instant popularity was largely due to CBS's smart scheduling. It was shown at 9:30 p.m. on Mondays. After one of the network's biggest hits, The Danny Thomas Show, throughout the Eastern world. Selection at random. The Andy Griffith Show began as a guest appearance on The Danny Thomas Show, where Andy Griffith made his first appearance as Sheriff Taylor. CBS positioned the new show immediately after The Danny Thomas Show in order to maintain viewer interest because they knew that viewers were already familiar with the character. The ratings skyrocketed, and the idea worked. The longevity of the show was the true measure of its success. It never dropped out of the top 10 in ratings for 8 years. Almost unheard of was that level of constancy. Even after season 5, viewers continued to watch the show. Almost no other show had accomplished what The Andy Griffith Show did by the time it concluded on April 1, 1968. It was the most popular show in America at the end of its last season. Few people, including Seinfeld and I Love Lucy, have ever managed to do it. However, The Andy Griffith Show had a lot of drama behind the scenes. In actual life, Aunt Bea was not at all like Frances Bavier. Although she played the devoted and affectionate grandmother of Mayberry on The Andy Griffith Show, she was aloof and challenging to collaborate with offscreen. Her greatest argument was with Andy Griffith. Although he enjoyed a laid-back set full of jokes and tricks, Bavier took acting seriously and wasn't very patient with shenanigans. It was not a subtle tension between them. The actors and staff knew about it. And she felt ignored. Although Barney Fife, played by Don Knotts, received the majority of the chuckles, she felt her role was not given the same possibilities for humor. She said in interviews that she felt marginalized. Occasionally, I've had to sit back and let other people laugh. She even sought therapy as a coping mechanism for the overwhelming frustration. Not only was her relationship with Griffith uncomfortable, it was sometimes downright hostile. It has been stated that Griffith was upset when producer Sheldon Leonard, rather than Griffith, cast Bavier. Bavier was referred to as a gifted actress by Jim Nabors, who portrayed Gomer Pyle, who had to tell Griffith to be kind to her. However, the strain persisted. Maneuvering a landmine alongside her, she could get agitated about little requests. In the end, Bavier and Griffith made peace after years of hostility. She contacted him to apologize in 1989 while she was fighting cancer. She apologized for their tense relationship and said, "I'm sorry we didn't get along better. It was my fault." It turned out to be one of their final discussions. Don Knotts' departure from the program after a season in 1965 was another significant upheaval, but this time, the true cause was not merely his movie career, rather, it was a financial misunderstanding that altered everything. A 5-year deal was signed by Knotts when the show began in 1960, making roughly $1,250 every time. This amounted to almost $35,000 annually. While it was a respectable salary, it was far less than Griffith's. Because he owned the majority of the show, Griffith was making a lot more money. Knotts had nothing to gain. As his contract came to an end in 1965, he thought the series would be coming to an end. In light of this, he agreed to a 5-film contract with Universal Studios. The Andy Griffith Show was later given a second season renewal by CBS. Suddenly, Knotts had to make a difficult choice. Seeking a better deal or a financial share in the show, he approached Griffith about renegotiating his contract. Griffith interpreted the request incorrectly, believing it to be an order. He let Knotts go rather than engage in negotiations. Griffith stayed connected to Knotts even after they left. Even though he made cameo appearances again, the show never felt quite the same. Some of Mayberry's initial appeal was gone without Barney Fife. Following his departure, many fans thought the humor had diminished. Barney's replacement will be disastrous. Jack Burns played Warren Ferguson, the show's new deputy in season 6. Burns appeared to be an excellent fit on paper. He was a former comedian who has shared the stage with George Carlin. Warren Ferguson, however, was unemployed. In contrast to the awkward yet endearing Barney, Warren seemed overly eager. He was not a part of the small-town charm of Mayberry. The audience didn't identify with him. Only 11 episodes later did the producers recognize their error. Was silently written off the program without a reason. Never again did they attempt to replace Barney. Rather, Gomer Pyle and Floyd the Barber, among other guest actors, filled in the comic voids. Warren's failure, however, made one thing very evident. Don Knotts was not merely a performer. There was no substitute for Barney Fife. The tenure of Eleanor Donahue on the show was considerably shorter. She portrayed Ellie Walker, the self-assured and smart pharmacist who was meant to be Andy Taylor's romantic interest. Despite having a 3-year contract, she left after just 12 episodes. The primary issue was that Donahue and Griffith didn't click. Their romance was artificial and stiff. Donahue responded uneasily when Andy reached for Ellie's hand in one instance. The script did not include it. The discomfort of real life was difficult to ignore. Behind the scenes, Donahue was having trouble as well. She was under personal turmoil and felt alone in the cast. In fact, several of her lines were transferred to other characters. She requested to have her contract terminated since she was unhappy with her role. No one argued among the producers. Although Griffith took her departure personally, he subsequently acknowledged that Ellie Walker had not been fully developed by the authors. Despite her promise, she was reduced to another TV history what might have been character due to a lack of compelling script and chemistry. Annetta Corsaw and Andy Griffith shared a bond that extended beyond their work on the Andy Griffith program. In 1963, Corsaw made his series debut as Opie's teacher, Helen Crump. Her chemistry with Griffith was evident, even though her role was only meant to appear in one episode. Their on-screen romance became a major aspect of the show, and she soon established herself as a regular. The situation was far more complex off-screen. The first wife of Griffith was Barbara Bray Edwards. In his book Andy and Don, The Making of a Friendship and a Classic American TV Show, Daniel DeVis claims that Griffith was completely captivated by her. Despite being married, he made at least one marriage proposal, if not more. However, Corso declined. A partnership based on adultery was not what she desired. The actors and staff were unaware of their romance. Their relationship was clear even though they made an effort to keep it quiet. At a hotel in Hollywood, one of the most notorious incidents of their alleged affair took place. The Andy Griffith Show's staff chose to play a practical joke on the couple by sending a waiter-posing crew member to bring dinner to their room. Originally intended to be a joke, what transpired made it a scandal. According to reports, the crew member caught Griffith and Corsott in a compromising situation when he entered. When the hoax backfired, anyone who hadn't previously worked out their relationship was exposed. Griffith felt enraged. Behind the scenes, tensions were only heightened by the occurrence. This might have marked a sea change for Corsott. If he could cheat on his wife with her, why wouldn't he do the same to her eventually? This event might have strengthened her choice to reject his proposals, which she had previously done. They continued working together in spite of the humiliation, never admitting what had occurred. The wholesome reputation of the Andy Griffith program was essential to its success. A semblance of scandal could have ruined that. Therefore, an attempt was made to keep Griffith's private life out of the public eye. Griffith was cautious himself. According to reports, he omitted some of the love sequences involving Andy Taylor and Helen Crump in order to minimize the attention being drawn to their actual relationship. Questions decreased when there were fewer kissing on film. Neither did the staff or the actors. No public statements were made, even as suspicions of the hotel prank circulated. The media wasn't as intrusive in the 1960s as it is now. No tabloids were covering every scandal. There should be no chatter on social media. Keeping secrets was easier for celebrities like Griffith. Between 1960 and 1968, the Andy Griffith Show was in operation, capturing the cozy, familiar feel of small-town life. On the surface, it appeared that Mayberry was a straightforward community where issues were resolved amicably. However, the program had a way of sneaking in more profound themes. Class, responsibility, and personal values were all addressed without ever feeling burdensome. Despite avoiding overt topics like the Vietnam War or civil rights, it managed to provoke thought among its viewers. Working-class dignity was one of its most powerful themes. This was demonstrated in a memorable fashion in the 1963 episode Man in a Hurry. Malcolm Tucker is a businessman whose automobile breaks down in Mayberry, leaving him stranded. Time is money, everything happens quickly, and waiting is not tolerated in the world he's accustomed to. No one in Mayberry, however, appears to be rushing. Sundays are a closed day for stores. Everyone takes their time, and deadlines are not a concern. He is initially annoyed. Although he encourages them to move more quickly, they don't. Something changes by the end of the show. To notice what he has been lacking. As he rocks on a chair on Andy's front porch, he comes to the realization that sometimes it's okay to slow down. The message was unforced and obvious. In a society that frequently prioritizes efficiency and speed over interpersonal relationships, Mayberry provided a different perspective. Mayberry, despite its allure, was not flawless. As the 1960s went on, it felt more and more out of character that the town had no black people. Later, Andy Griffith acknowledged his regret about this. The show attempted to depict small-town life, but in doing so, it disregarded a significant aspect of reality. Nevertheless, the show's main themes were belonging. In Mayberry, characters who may have been viewed as outsiders in real life, such as Barney Fife and Gomer Pyle, were welcomed. There were more than simply idyllic families in the community. The goal was to provide individuals with a space where they were valued. A few episodes were notable for their approach to addressing actual problems. Among them was the 1961 television program Opie and the Bully. Opie is now being harassed. Educational institution. Opie gives the child his milk money without protest every day. He is not instructed to punch the bully by Andy, but he is also not instructed to stay out of arguments. He teaches Opie a lesson that audiences remember. Though I don't want him to seek out fights, I also don't want him to flee from one when he's right. After confronting the bully, Opie sustains a black eye, but he also regains his dignity. The episode was well balanced. Although it was a straightforward tale, it had significance. It did not exalt combat, nor did it imply that fleeing was the best course of action. In 1961, Opie's hobo friend was another episode that made a mark. David Brown, a drifter portrayed by Buddy Ebsen, wins Opie over with his easygoing demeanor. David is unemployed, disobedient, and persuades Opie that skipping school is not a serious issue. Instead of making David leave, Andy intervenes by attempting to guide him in a more constructive direction. In an attempt to discipline Opie, David organizes his own arrest after realizing he isn't suited for that kind of life. The program didn't provide simple solutions. While it did not portray David as a villain, it also did not pretend that his lifestyle was admirable. It was adored by certain viewers. Some believed it to be a romanticization of vagrancy. In any case, it caused individuals to reflect. The program managed to address societal issues in a way that avoided becoming overt. The 1962 television program Mayberry Goes Bankrupt told the story of an elderly man who was mistreated by local authorities. External parties. Though they never alluded to actual occurrences, these episodes touched on a deeper level. They prompted discussion about kindness, justice, and how societies ought to treat one another. That is the reason they are still in use today. Fans were left wanting more after the 1968 finale of the Andy Griffith program. Mayberry RFD was a spin-off, not a reboot or a brand new plot, since CBS wasn't prepared to say goodbye either. With Ken Berry as Sam Jones, the new main character, it was a continuation. Mike, Sam's small son, was being raised by a widowed farmer. Both characters were previously introduced in the last season of the Andy Griffith series to provide a seamless transition. On September 23, 1968, the debut episode of Mayberry RFD aired, and it got off to a great start. As fans had been anticipating, it included Andy Taylor and Helen Crump's wedding. The episode became the most watched television premiere at the time, breaking previous records. In the nation, the first season of the show was the fourth most popular. Andy Griffith made sporadic appearances in the beginning to facilitate the change. The town's atmosphere was also maintained by well-known characters like Howard Sprague, Aunt Bee, and Gooberpile. However, something was different. Although Mayberry's charm persisted, the show lacked the depth and humor that set the Andy Griffith Show apart. There were less complicated conflicts and simpler stories. Audiences still adored it. It remained in the Nielsen ratings top 10 for 3 seasons. Not only did the first episode introduce the new show, it also served as Andy's farewell. The story opens with his pals celebrating at an Italian restaurant for his bachelor party. While he prepares for his honeymoon, Aunt Bee makes a significant choice. Since Andy doesn't need her anymore, she intends to move out of Mayberry and live with her sister in West Virginia. Her new job in the series is established when she later changes her mind and moves in with Sam Jones as his housekeeper. The wedding itself is a heartfelt and humorous event. Acting as Andy's best man, Barney Fife. The emotional and humorous moment is enhanced by his apprehensive energy. After the ceremony, Aunt Bee decides to stay in town after discussing her future with Reverend Tucker. The way one chapter ended and a new one began was ideal. Even while Mayberry RFD was popular, it didn't last. The reason wasn't that viewers became disinterested. The program suffered during CBS's 1971 rural purge. In order to attract advertisers, the network sought out younger, urban consumers. Therefore, Mayberry RFD, Green Acres, and the Beverly Hillbillies were all discontinued in spite of their outstanding ratings. Even the joke that anything with a tree in it was discarded was made by a CBS official. The fans were astonished. The popularity of the show had never wavered, yet it was no longer there. For years, it appeared that Mayberry would never be the same. Then, the majority of the original ensemble returned in the made-for-TV film Return to Mayberry, which CBS released in 1986. Achieved a 33.0 Nielsen rating on April 13, making it the year's highest-rated television film. 20 years later, the narrative resumes. Just as Opie is about to become a father, Andy Taylor makes his way back to Mayberry. Barney Fife, meantime, finally gets the opportunity to run for sheriff. Barney and Thelma Lou's long-overdue wedding is one of the movie's most significant scenes. Some did not come back. It was obvious that Aunt Bee was not there. The actress decided not to reprise her role for health concerns, which is why the film states that she had passed away. Despite her absence, the movie provided viewers with the resolution they had been anticipating. While the Andy Griffith Show may have had a greater influence in the past, Mayberry RFD allowed fans to spend a few more years in a community they cherished. And the 1986 broadcast of Return to Mayberry served as a reminder to everyone of the reasons they had never truly left. Mount Airy, North Carolina, has been transformed into an Andy Griffith Show prop every September since 1990. Andy Griffith's hometown, Mayberry, is the site of the annual Mayberry Days event, which attracts more than 40,000 attendees. For a few days, people in costume as Barney Fife, Aunt Bee, and other well-known figures clogged the streets. There are vintage police cars along the roads, similar to those in the show. Parades, music, and special occasions make Mayberry a vibrant place. The Mayberry Days Parade is among the most popular events. While wearing costumes from classics. The Andy Griffith Museum features original props and memorabilia, including artifacts donated by Don Knotts, that provide a closer look at the history of the program. In the style of the 1960s, fans may view vintage episodes on a large screen at the historic Earl Theater. Live bluegrass bands continue to play at the Blackman Amphitheater. Mayberry Days are genuinely unique since the whole community participates. Stores sell mementos with a Mayberry theme, food items that are influenced by the show, and impersonators who stroll the streets talking to tourists as though they were in an episode. For fans, it's an opportunity to enter the Mayberry universe and goes beyond simply attending a festival. Not only did the Andy Griffith Show appeal to viewers, numerous prizes were given to it. Throughout its 1960 to 1968 run, the program won 6 Primetime Emmy Awards. Don Knotts, who played Barney Fife, received 5 of those, making him one of the most honored comedy actors in television history. Frances Bavier, who portrayed Aunt Bee, was awarded an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in 1967. Despite being nominated several times, the show itself was surprisingly never awarded an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. Just got stronger when it was over. During the early 2000s, it received TV Land accolades, such as Favorite Second Banana for Barney Fife and Single Dad of the Year for Andy Taylor. It was admitted to the TV Hall of Fame of the Online Film and Television Association in 2006 and again in 2021. Additionally, critics have acknowledged the show's enduring influence. It was ranked 9th by TV Guide in 2002, but shows like Opie the Birdman are still hailed as among of the best in television history.